Okay, so number one, we have been given a bunch of test scores. So everybody needs to grab their calculator and we're going to be doing a stat edit. Don't forget, if you got stuff, up, clear, down. Up, clear, down. And I need you to type in all of that info. Okay, once I have all of the data in my L1, I'm actually going to go second quit. I'm out of there. Okay, stat, calculate, one variable statistics. I don't need to push L1 because it will just automatically do it. So there's our first answer. The mean is the 77.6. The median, the one that would be in the middle, is an 80. Mode, let's skip it for a second here and then we'll do range first. So range is the highest, 99. Subtract the lowest, 49. So that would be a range of 50. Okay, for mode, if you want, you can just look on your paper to see if you can find any. It's easy if you have a few numbers, but if you have a lot of numbers, this is what we're going to do. Stat. I'm going to sort. It doesn't matter. I'll go sort ascending. L1. So sort A, L1, enter. Okay, sort A, L1, enter. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the L1. So stat edit. And now I can scroll through them. Oh, 80, 80. That's twice. That's it. 80 happened twice. So 80 is the mode. All right. So that's the basics. Fill in the correct word on this blank. So either you're going to put bigger or smaller. The larger sample size that you have in a study, so for instance, if I'm surveying people, I could have a large sample size of like 2,000 people I surveyed versus a small sample size is that I asked 40 people. Okay? So if I surveyed 2,000 people versus 40 people, what's going to happen with my margin of error? So the larger amount of sample I have, the more people I survey, my results are going to be better, right? More accurate. So this will be a smaller margin of error. Or the more trials you have, the more accurate your info is going to be. And if you have a smaller sample size, your margin of error will be bigger. Does that make sense? The more you do something, the more accurate it's going to be. The more people you ask, the more accurate your data is going to be. Okay, a survey question. So we have 2,500 Manitobans being surveyed to see how many people have a home phone. So here's what they said about it. The survey results were given. 45% of people surveyed had phone lines. This result was accurate within 3% points, 95 times out of 100. So state the confidence level. We're 95% confident in our findings. State the confidence interval. So I need to go 45, subtract 3, and 45 plus 3, because my margin of error is a plus or minus 3. So I'm either above it for 3 or below it for 3. So the interval is from 42% to 48% of the people. That's the interval. So if the population was 1.9 million, how many people would we expect to have phone lines? So I'm going to take that 1.9 million and times it by a 0.42, because that's how we times percents. And then I'm going to do the same thing with a 0.48. Okay, remember that you can do a second entry and then just go back and change. Okay, so there's my range of people, my interval of people. So this is my conclusion. Between 798,000 and 912,000 people have home phones. Okay, number 4. Which group of data is most consistent? So who would be more consistent between these two groups, A or B? A. Why? It has a lower standard deviation. Standard deviation tells you the number, how far you are from the center. Okay, the idea of here more scores would be closer to the center. Here the scores are farther from the center. So if you're farther from the average, that means you're spread out. Okay, number 5, analyze this. So this is kind of same-ish. Your mean, they kind of have the same-ish average. Yeah, this is about the same. Oh, this is quite a bit different. This one has a range of 12, and this one has a range of 25. So what does range tell us? Again, it's telling us how much we spread out from the center. So this one is more consistent. And that one is more spread out or farther from the center or from the mean. Okay? It's like having a math test, and I could have an average of 70. This scenario would be, most people would be kind of between like 60 and 90. Here I would have had maybe a 20% and 100%. Okay, we had a class get an average on a test of 80. So that's right in the middle. The standard deviation of this test was 4. So I'm going to go 84, 88, 92. So if you were 2 standard deviations above the mean, your score would have been 88. Going down, 76, 72, 68. Okay, what percent of the class scored between 68 and 80? Between the 68 and the 80. Can you find that by going to your cheat sheet? Okay, so on your sheets you should have 49.85% between those two zones. Okay, above 76, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, so we should grab this little section and then add 50% to it, right? Does that make sense, what I would do that? 50 is all the half, and then I think, what does that one come out to be? 68 divided by 2, 34. So this one would be 84% of the data. 84% of the students scored above that. Okay, below 72%. Okay, I'm not sure how you want to do it. You might have all of those little sections. For me, I know that, and I would probably minus it from the 50%, but you might have all your sections on your paper, so you can do that if you want. I got a 2.5%. Are we okay finding that? I did a method of taking away those 2 sections, but you could have, I'm not sure if you had your little sections and you added them up. Okay, between 72, so 2 down, and 88 is 2 up. Oh, so this is one of the major rules. What's between the -2 and the 2? That is one of the rules. I think that's the 95 rule. What's one of the rules that it started us? Okay, between 76 and 88. Okay, so on your sheet, I think you would have a 34 probably written there. And then on this one, a 47.5. 81.5% of the data. And the last one is finding this section. And did anybody get a number? Is it 2 point something? What is that number? 2.5 or 1.5?
No, mine says 2.5.
So this whole thing is 49.85.
Wait, now we got
2.35. 2.35. Does that make sense? That's what we got. All right. Determine a Zed score. So everybody has this formula on your sheet, right? Can you check your cheat sheet? Do you have your formula written down? Somewhere you should have your score minus mean over standard. Everyone has something like that on your sheet to look at because you're bringing that with you and that's what you have. Okay, so the Zed score equals my score 93 minus 85 over 5. So on my calculator, I'm either pushing equals before the divide or I'm bracketing. I don't care as long as you do one of those. And remember, your Z score probably should make sense. Most of our Z scores are kind of between -3 and 3. Your Z score can go above the 3. There's not much out there, but it can. Okay, and then number 8 reverses it, and this time I gave you the Z score. And I want to figure out my score minus the mean over the standard. So you're going to have one of each of those on the test. I'm going to give you your score, get the Z. I'll give you the Z, you get yours. So I'm going to times and add. Okay, so that was my algebra stuff. I times by 5 and I added the 85. Okay, determine the percents. As soon as I see the question getting a percent, do we know what feature we're using in our calculator? If we need the percent, do you remember the button? Maybe you should write that on your cheat sheet. To get percent, use this. Okay, so if you haven't written that beside your normal CDF, you can write a star that says, use this to get percents. Okay, so this is what I'm physically trying to do. So I want the percent between that. So on the normal CDF, how do I write this? And remember, there's 4 things. Low, high, comma, mean, comma, standard. What is the mean? Because I didn't tell you it, but what is the mean when you talk about Zed scores? What is always the mean? 0. What's always the standard on a mean or on a Zed score? 1. Because you're always 1, 2, 3. -1, -2, -3. Okay, so that should be our typing. I got 94.6% of the data on that. Okay, everyone was okay with the buttons? Okay, next. So the next one is trying to do the percent of the data. What percent of the data is above a 0.6? Okay, so what are the 4 things I'm going to type? The most left is 0.6. To the most right is 99999, comma 0, comma 1. Okay, the last one, below a 2.5. So this is what that would look like, below a 2.5. Okay, so the things that I'm going to type, left is -999s, all the way to 2.5, 0, 1. Okay, so those questions were the system of percents using Zed scores. Now, number 10 is the same thing, except for now they're not Zed scores. Okay, so we have a mean of 33.7. How much of the data is above 30? Okay, so same function, normal CDF. On the left, I'm at 30. To the right, I'm infinite. But this time, our mean is not 0. And our standard, so this time it just was a number instead of our basic Zed scores. See if we are matching when you're done your types. On the next question, I'm asking you what's between 30 and 40. So on that, you're going to go 30 to 40, comma, with the mean 33.7 and the standard. All right, and the last question here, between the 35 and the 40. So this is what it would kind of physically look like, because they're both above the mean. Okay, so on your test, I'm gonna ask if you could write this sentence down as well as your answer. Okay, because I don't want to just look at your answer. I want to see how you're getting it, because if you do get it wrong, I could see if you just did something small wrong, maybe you just typed in something wrong, I can give you partial points. Are we getting 30.1%? Anybody matching? Okay, this time I've been given the percent. So once you're given the percent, which button do you push? Okay, so maybe, again on your cheat sheet, maybe you want to put a star beside that on your cheat sheet. When you're given the percent, this is where we go to. The last time we used it to get percent. Now this time we've been given the percent, so we got to work backwards. So this is what I'm doing. I've been given 10% is below what? So I'm going to inverse norm what's below me as a decimal. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm getting negative 1.28, but that's not my answer. That is a Zed score. So what is my score? Okay, so I'm going to times and add. Remember the algebra? Times by 2.6, add 33.7. Okay, next, 60% of the data is below, so this is where I would be. I can already tell you my Z score is positive. I can tell you that. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so inverse norm, 0.6. I'm getting a Z of 0.25. That's the calculator telling me Z score. So Z score equals my score minus the mean over the standard. Oh, I guess I could write something in here for standard. 2.6. Okay. By the way, I'm not rounding that 0.25. It's in my calculator. Times 2.6. Add 33.7. Okay, 15% of the data is above what? That's my situation physically, if you want to see it drawn out. Okay, I'm going to inverse norm. I have a problem here. What is the problem that I am dealing with? I can't type 0.15 in there. Why? What does this always tell me to put in? What's below me? You always have to do what's below you. Okay, so if there's 15 above you, what is the below you? How much is below you? Is that 85% of the data is below you at that spot? Okay, so I'm going to go 0.85. By the way, if you had done it wrong and you typed in 0.15, you should understand the negative Z score. That's not a negative Z score where you are, right? Because you're near the top. You're above the average. You're above. If you're above the mean, you're positive. If you're below the mean, you're negative. I'm definitely positive here. So 0.85, 1.04. Okay, then we jump back into our Z score formula. So I'm on my calculator with that in there yet. Times and add. Okay, we have one page left. What do you want me to do? Have a 5-minute break and end the page, or just finish? Break now or finish now? What do you want me to do? Okay, so we're going to put all the info into a frequency table. So anything from 70 to 79. So I have 1, 2, anybody find any others? Is it 2? Good, committed? 2? Okay. Okay, the next would be in the 80s. Anything in an 80. So I have a 1, 2, 3, 4. Concur? Anybody found the same? 4? Thank you. Sometimes my counting skills. Okay, in the 90s, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm going to let you finish. And then you're going to tell me the last 3. All right, somebody give me a hundreds number here. Feel confident about it. Okay, so when we do this, by the way, I'm going to give you points for telling me a title, a title, a title. You need 3 titles on your drawing. Don't forget or I'll take a point away. So this was track and field discus throws. So let's just call this about discus throws. On the bottom, we're going to say this is the distance thrown. And the number of throwers. Okay, so really it only starts at 70. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a squiggle line on a chart. That just means I'm skipping. I'm not going to start at 0. So now I'm going to go 70 to 80. So since I only need to go to 7, I think you have room on the side if you want to skip. Okay, you can kind of judge how to make it with nice spacing. Okay, now let's, oh, what am I asked here? Should draw a frequency table. Okay, so I started a bar graph, that wasn't good. Okay, so 70 to 80, I'm going to put a dot in the middle. So 70 and 80, I'm a dot in the middle of that at a height of 2. So you go into the middle of your zones. And then when you're done, you're connecting your dots together. Okay, how many throwers were in this competition? So you could go here and you could count how many those were all together, like 1, 2, 3. Or faster, I could add up this. Because 2 people threw that, 4 people threw that. So this adds up to what? I got 22 people that had throws. Is this a normal distributed set of data? Yes or no, and how do we know? Well, my answer is yes. Why do you think I'm answering that it is?
It's the bell shape, right?
Yeah, it goes on a trend. It gets higher in the middle and lower on the outsides. Okay, it doesn't have to be a perfect bell, but as long as it's continuing that trend of low on the outsides, higher in the middle, somehow. Okay, find the mean, median, mode, range using the table. Okay, so let's go stat edit. What kind of number am I typing in my L1? Let's go with 75, 85, 95. Okay, that's your L1. And then obviously these numbers are your L2. Okay, I have all that in there. Find the mean, so we're gonna go stat calculate one variable statistics. This time you do have to enter L1 comma L2 because you're trying to get it to calculate it with the both. Okay, so you have to do that. All right, enter. So we have a mean 98.6. Median is 100. Is that what your calculator's telling you? The mode, I'm actually going to look at my frequency table here. Which interval was the highest interval? This. So I'd be okay if you wrote the interval or the 105. I don't care. I'd be okay with either one. If you had written me either that interval or the midpoint of that interval, I would accept both of those. That'd be okay. Basically, just understanding you're taking the highest. And the range. So we can go on here, max 125 minus min 75. So that is 50. So if you had a throw of 95, what's your Z score? So Z equals 95 minus the mean over the, okay, and I took mine off of my screen before I wrote that one down. So I'm going to go back. Now I need the standard. So 12.98. Okay, what percent? Ooh, what percent? Which feature are you using as soon as you read what percent? Normal CDF. What percent were under 80? So below 80. So negative 9999 to 80, comma mean. We have our mean, comma standard. So all those numbers we got already. Okay, next, what percent of the throwers threw between the 100 and the 120 mark? So the same function, can you get me a number here? So now I'm between something, always end with comma mean, comma standard. Okay, and the last question, I feel like this one's always seems to be the hardest question because you're going to have to do two things for this. 80% of throwers, okay, I've been given the percent. So did you remember to write that down on your sheet? If you're given the percent, inverse norm. Okay, now let's talk about this. If 80% of the throwers threw at least this distance, this is the scenario. If you're at least, it means that you're above where that score. So what am I actually typing in right here? It's not 80, it's not 0.8. It's, did you pick 0.20? Because that's under you. That's the part under. You always got to go with the below. So I got a negative 0.84. And now we're going to end it with convert to a discus throw. Convert it back to a discus throw, so times, add, so that was the discus throw amount where 80% of the people were at least reaching that amount. So 20% of the people did not get that far.